I've always asked this question: what is next when it comes to marriage? What's around the corner? I'm in my late 50s. What comes in the 60s? So guys, if you're in your 30s, 40s, you're right in the middle of the stress bubble, I'm excited for today's episode. Today, I'm excited to have our guest on the show, Dr. Kimberling. Dr. Kim has been married to his beautiful wife of Nancy for 54 years. That's married 54 years. Dr. Kim's a professional counselor over the last 40 years. He holds a PhD and a doctor in ministry and Christian counseling. He is the founder of Awesome Marriage, which is an online marriage resource helping thousands of couples across the world rescue, restore, and grow their marriage. And he does that every week. Dr. Kim is the author of several marriage books, including his most recent book, Love, Intimacy, and Sex in the Second Half, which he co-authored with his bride, Nancy. Guys, this book is really important because I've always asked this question: what is next when it comes to marriage? What's around the corner? I'm in my late 50s. What comes in the 60s? This is a book that helps us get there. So guys, if you're in your 30s, 40s, you're right in the middle of the stress bubble, this is a great resource for you. I'm excited for today's episode. Hey guys, I'm excited right now to have Dr. Kimberling on the show. Man, I've been on his podcast. He's on mine. When I found out about this book he wrote with his wife called Love, Intimacy, and Sex in the Second Half, when a guy who's been married 54 years writes a book like that, hey buddy, you better ask some questions. So I'm excited about this book. Dr. Kim, it's great to have you on the show, man. Thank you so much for coming.
Jim, it's so good to be here. I love what you do. I'm excited about your new book and how it's doing and continue to do and help people. But I love it. I love talking about to guys. A lot of our following Awesome Marriage is women, and we do a lot of things to try to involve the guys. So I love being able to come on with you, talk about guy stuff.
Yeah, this is when I read the book, because I'm 58. How old are you? 70?
I just turned 77.
70. You're 77? Oh, you look
bizarre.
Okay. Wow. Well, you're going to be my sensei of sex, love, and intimacy today. So you guys who are listening offline, I was telling Dr. Kim, I go, hey man, I have questions because nobody talks to men about what, we tell women, what to expect when inspecting.
Yeah.
But we don't tell men anything. So men go through life, and especially with sex, as young high school guys, college guys, I'm talking non-Christian right now, sex is this rite of passage. This is this bragging thing. But when guys get married, they shut down about sex because I think sex becomes something that less than what they hoped it would be. And so it's so important to have this conversation. So before we jump into this discussion on love, intimacy, and sex in the second half, tell us about you. Who are you? Where are you from? What makes you tick? What do you like to do? Let's hear some stuff about you.
Well, Nancy, like you said, Nancy and I have been married for 54 years. We met on a blind date in college, and it worked. We dated a couple of years, got married. We have 2 kids, 5 grandkids, and getting ready to have our first great-grandchild. So that's exciting. It's a boy, which I'm totally excited about. Can't wait to do stuff with him. And I've been a marriage counselor for 40-something years. Started out working a lot with kids, and then realized, okay, I need to work more with the parents too, because the kids, I can get them really good place, and they have to go home to this crazy household sometimes. So I began doing more marriage, and that's kind of evolved, and God's kind of led me that way. So still do a couple of days of counseling a week. The rest of the times with Awesome Marriage, which is our online marriage ministry, and we reach people all over the world. God's really blessed it, and it's a lot of fun. I get to talk to people everywhere. Get to kind of see what goes on in their culture, and finding really in marriage, the cultures shape it a little different, but the problems are still the same, no matter where you are. They still have the same problems, no matter where we are, which is encouraging because it's kind of sometimes in just some of our materials and things I say, we tweak it a little bit for the culture. Basically it's the same thing of trying to help people wherever they are. Passionate about sports. Oklahoma City Thunder is our basketball team. We live in Oklahoma City. OU football has been a part of my life forever. So just enjoy that, enjoy kids sports. Love just being with friends and family. That's my passion really. And really helping people have the marriage live the life God has for them, because I think God has some stuff for everybody. And one thing in marriage, every marriage is unique because the two people are unique, and helping people see that and know that God's got a special plan just for them. And I think when you grasp that, that's pretty exciting. That the person who created the universe has a plan for your marriage. Pretty cool deal. It's a really cool deal.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, when we were first married, we're two low maintenance people in a very high maintenance marriage. And so we always thought, do we have a good marriage? Do we have a good marriage? Because we're just so different than other people. We bicker, we argue, and we do our thing. But, you know, we realize, yeah, we do. We just have a different marriage. Our marriage is different. And so once we
Yeah,
embraced our identity, we were able, and the funny part is all the people we compared ourselves to got divorced. So, you know, so this is really important for people to embrace their identity as a couple. And tell us about,
absolutely.
you know, tell us about this book. And I do believe marriage is under attack. I did a wedding last weekend, and you know, everybody wants to call people their partner, and I just hate that phrase with a passion. It's just not biblical. It's contractual, and you know,
I do
there's just
too.
this attack. So tell us about your book, Love, Intimacy, and Sex. You married 54 years in the second half. So you co-authored this with your bride Nancy. Tell us about why you
Yep.
guys decided to write this book.
Well, the first thing we ever did together, I've written books before that we had published, and this one we just wanted to do together. And we had done a couple of podcast things together. We'd done some other video stuff together, and somebody came up, well, Greg Johnson, who's my agent, said, "What if you guys do a book together?" And so we kind of brainstormed.
Greg Johnson is your agent.
Yes,
Greg Johnson is my agent.
no,
He's
no way.
he's
How
my agent.
cool! How
Oh,
cool!
that's so funny. So we're kind of like cousins.
We are, I think, first cousins, maybe.
Yeah, that's too funny. That's sorry
That's
about that,
great. Well,
guys.
no, I just sent him an email right before we got on. So anyway, that's great. That's so cool. Well, then you know how great a guy he is,
Oh
and
yeah.
how and I love the way he kind of walked us through that. And basically, what we did, we just had all these questions and stuff, and we just recorded for hours, and then the editors took that and condensed it down, and that books a lot of our dialogue between each other. And then we put some stuff around that. But that's what we wanted. Nancy, as you were kind of saying before we went there, she's very transparent. She's very open. She's very raw. She wants to help people, and if being open and transparent helps it get there, she's all in on that. So I think it is a very open book, an honest book, and it was really fun to do together. It was, and interesting. We both learned some things. Probably it's been so long since we recorded, but I remember talking then about, didn't know that. I didn't know that happened, and I didn't know that was your best friend, and whatever it was. We learned about each other, which I think is another thing that's cool about marriage. I don't think you learn everything there is about your spouse in a lifetime, and if you think you have, you're missing something, because we change, we grow, and I love doing life with her and just learning more about each other as we enter each different stage of life. It's been fun. It is fun.
You know, it's so funny, Kim. My wife, we were on vacation with several couples in Mexico about 8 months ago, and we were playing this game where you have a card and you read a statement about the person, and the card was, does the person on your right like crunchy or creamy peanut butter? And my wife is the one I'm guessing. I go, oh, slam dunk. 32 years later, creamy peanut butter, baby. Point for me. She goes, I like crunchy. I'm like, you never let me buy crunchy all our marriage. What are you talking about? We're having this bantering back and forth. She's like, well, I did it for the kids. I'm like, 32 years later, and we both love crunchy, and you made me buy creamy? It was so funny. So I
We
mean,
could have had 2 jars.
I'm
with the
like,
kids
yes, what are you doing? Anyway, we got to fight over
That is,
peanut butter.
isn't that funny how the little things that we just, I don't know, we just think and don't even think about it. Yeah, that's a great example.
So funny. So that's just, you never learn. You never stop learning about your spouse. So you
Yeah.
you know so you asked this question. You asked this question, a redundant question. What does love look like in the second half of marriage? And then you continue. You say, I used to be afraid that it meant sitting side by side in rocking chairs on a front porch staring out at the world. Maybe that will be us one day, but I want the gap between today and that day to be very different. So, based on that quote and what you've experienced in your 54 years of marriage, how is, generally speaking here, how is love different in the first half than the second? Are there some ringing differences you've seen?
I think for us, we went through all the stuff that a lot of people go through in marriage. We had a rough time. We were on the edge of divorce in year 7. So we had to work through a lot of things. You raise kids together and all the stuff that comes along with that and the distractions that come with that and loving kids, loving the things we did. That we know we set our marriage on the back burner for a period of time then. One of the purposes of the book is to help people maybe think about and not make some of the mistakes we made. And so I think as the kids got older and we became empty nest, we began to, I think our marriage, our love for each other really grew because we were spending more time with each other. And I think one of the mistakes that I would go back and do different is that I think we didn't do some things in the earlier years raising kids that I think would have benefited us going in the second half of marriage. We didn't take a trip for just the two of us for years. And then when we finally did take that trip, when I think my daughter was graduating, it was like, what have we been missing? Because you got to get away together. You got to just spend that time together. And so, what I see coming in second half, once you get that emptiness, you kind of, I mean, it's kind of weird at first. It's like we don't have to go home and to help with homework or to fix dinner or anything. We can do whatever we want, whenever we want. And so, enjoying that time together. And I think it's given us, we found things that we enjoy doing together that we really didn't take time for before. And so I think our love has grown in that just because we spent more time together. And I think there's no shortcut to a lot of these things. It is spending time together. You can't just grow your love in a marriage, and spend 5 minutes a week together. That's just not going to grow it. You may maintain it, probably not even maintain it.
So I'm in year 32. I've had a lot of my friends divorced because their kids left the house and then they went, "Who am I married to?" But I want to go
Yeah.
back and because our target audience, a huge majority of our guys are in year 1 to 15 in marriage. So you
Yeah.
said that you almost lost your marriage at year 7. How did you come out of that? What did you learn there, and how did you come out of that?
I think what it really did for us, we were at a point it really was kind of on Nancy. She said, "I'm not really sure I love you enough to stay married." Well, we just had our son, so this just kind of hit me hard, and we talked about it. We prayed about it. She went to see this godly woman in our church that I will be forever grateful for. Because Nancy went to her telling the story like it was a friend of hers. The lady later told Nancy that I know all the time you're talking about yourself, but basically after all of this, she said, "You tell your friend to trust God, to go back and love your husband, and God's going to make something beautiful out of it." And it was like it was magic for Nancy. She came back and told me that. And the key thing that we did, we took the word divorce off the table. We never brought it up again. That was huge for us because I had used it as a weapon, probably in some ways, or to end a fight, or well, if we're going to fight like this, if you're going to say this, I'll just divorce you. Things like that were just horrible to say. And so when we took divorce off the table in year 7, that was a huge difference for us because then it's like, okay, we're still going to have problems, but we got to work it out and we got to figure it out and we got to do it together and quit pointing fingers at each other and figure this out together. I think we learned to put the problem between us and both of us solve the problem, I'm sorry, in front of us and both of us solve the problem instead of let that problem be between us and fight over her way to solve it and my way to solve it. That was a huge step for us there.
So you put the problem between you instead of letting the problem. Wait,
Well,
say
we
that
put the
again. That was
problem
really
in
good.
front of us so we could both look at it.
Instead of letting
Yeah.
it get between you.
Yeah.
That is so good.
Yeah. Yeah. It just made all the difference because then it was like we were solving the problem together. And it just kind of, I don't know that was some great revelation. I think we just kind of evolved into that and we thought this works because we were listening to each other. We weren't going to think about, Nancy would say something. I'd be the whole time I wouldn't hear what she said because I'm thinking about what as soon as she stops, I've got this brilliant thing I'm going to say that's going to solve the problem and make everything okay. Well, obviously it didn't because she knew right off that I wasn't listening to her. So when we began to approach it in a different way, it made all the difference in the world.
Wow. Okay, so you triggered a thought in my head here. You said we started using the word divorce. We stopped using the word divorce. We removed that from our vocabulary. We stopped using that word. So to me, divorce to me is a contractual term. It's a term that people use in a contractual marriage, right? It's something that in covenant we don't bring up. Are there other contractual
Right.
words that you're hearing that you would tell young couples, stop using that word? Are there any other words out there that you're hearing that seem to be more contractual in nature and not covenantal?
Yeah, I think, and I talked a little bit this before. I think the word partner. You were mentioning doing a wedding, and I see that, and I think some of these things have just kind of we've let them creep into our vocabulary and the way we talk about things. And so I think anything that makes us not look at marriage as a covenant would definitely fall into that. And partner, when I think of that, it's like, well, maybe you and I go together and we do a podcast together. We're partners in that. Well, that's a partnership. That's not a covenant. And but marriage is a covenant. And so um, I think we our culture doesn't really stress that the way it needs to be. I can talk when I do premarital counseling, which I love to do. I mean, that's something that's so important for couples to see, and because you're right, when you see your relationship like that, you've already taken divorce off the table. It's not an option, And there's exceptions. I get it with abuse. There's things that there certainly are exceptions for separation, but in general, that's not part of what God's plan was. It wasn't like, I think sometimes. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were talking to a friend of theirs. They're in their third marriage, and they're only 28. But it's like that person thinks they've married the wrong person 3 times in a row. Well, no, that's not it. And so when you look at divorce as an option and a way out, I think it keeps you from doing the things you need to do to make your marriage work, and then to grow it and to grow your love and things like that. Because you're just saying, if you say that one more time, I'm out of here. And then you go find out somebody else. Well, usually you have the same problems in every relationships are unique in a lot of ways, but there's a lot of similarities to the way we
Yes.
handle things and the problems we have.
So I'm asking this as an honest question. I don't think I don't have an answer for this. In your book, you talk about wrenches. Is using this contractual terms, are these wrenches or are wrenches something beyond that, something deeper, more sinister?
Yeah, I think it could be. I think anything that keeps you from having the marriage God wants you to be could be a wrench. Could be a wrench. And so, you know, um, I was trying to think of a great example. I'm kind of blanking on it right now, but wrenches can be things like if you like pornography is a wrench for sure. I mean that's a huge wrench in a marriage relationship, and I think for helping guys, a lot of times I think as guys we don't realize how that affects our wives and how deeply that can hurt them, and so helping guys see that. Um, it can you got to take that wrench out of your marriage if that's there.
Yeah, and we're talking about intimacy, love, and sex here. So you talk about wrenches in your book. You said this, and I like to define terms. So you said wrenches are things we throw right into the middle of the cycle that are 100% avoidable, but that disrupts everything. So when I first heard the word wrench in your book, I thought, oh, cancer, death. But you changed it to it's something that you throw in. I thought that was really, really powerful. And you identified 3 wrenches. Can you talk to us about this wrench, this information wrench? How is information a potential wrench to break the marriage cycle?
Well, the longer you're married, you get a lot of information about each other. You just do things, and so you've got this arsenal back here of ammunition, and in a married covenant relationship, that information is to help you come alongside your spouse to see what their needs are and how you can help them. But when you're in a healthy situation, when you're throwing a wrench, you're bringing that out and saying, "Well, you did this back then," or you know, I I thought you were a virgin when we got married, and I found out you weren't, and you keep throwing that at her, or any kind of thing that you use the information that has been shared with you in an intimate way and put it back as a weapon against the other person. Does that make sense?
Oh, that is so powerful, Dr. Kim. I didn't realize when you said information, I thought, oh, the internet or something. But you're saying that what I have, I am building a case against you, and
Yeah.
I can either so okay. That goes to your second wrench, killer wrench, and you said so that information can lead to the second one, which is unforgiveness. Can you talk about the power of unforgiveness when it comes to information and ruining a marriage?
Yeah, unforgiveness will kill a marriage. And I tell when I talk to singles, I say if you're in a relationship with somebody and they can't forgive you, run. just run the other way, because you have to be able to forgive each other in a marriage relationship. Because I'm going to do a lot of things. If Nancy didn't forgive me for those things, oh boy, we've been dead a long time ago in our
For sure,
marriage
for sure.
relationship. So forgiveness is such a valuable part of it. And I think it helps you to grow. It helps you to be honest with each other, humble with each other, those kind of things. But when you're not forgiving, well, then you're holding this over the other person. And maybe it's like, well, you don't deserve my forgiveness because you did this. Or if I forgive you, how do I know you're not going to do it again? So I'm not going to forgive you. So it becomes a weapon, like the wrench in those situations.
Only you're
And
throwing the wrench at their head.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And he was our example of forgiveness and what he did for us. And somebody said to me a long time ago, and I'm so thankful they did, that if Jesus was able to go on the cross and forgive us, how in the world should we not be able to forgive somebody else?
That's so powerful. As you were talking, I thought of, if 2 Corinthians 5, I think it's 19 or 20, 21. It says that God has given us this ministry of reconciliation, reconciling himself to us to himself, but reconciling us to each other. And that is so
Yeah,
important in a marriage. If we can't keep short accounts and reconcile, that bitterness will dig a hole, and that hole becomes a grave for the marriage. I mean, right?
it does. It does. It
Wow.
does. It just keeps going down, and the deeper you get, if somebody doesn't change, it is a marriage killer. Those kind of things will kill a marriage. But there's always hope. But
Always hope.
you gotta learn to do some things different. Yeah, there's always
Always
hope.
hope. Yeah, no, I think there's always hope in a marriage, especially between two people that love Jesus. If they're loving Jesus together, that should bring them closer to Jesus and then closer to each other. So there's always
Absolutely.
hope for that marriage. If you're struggling right now in a marriage, then there's always hope for you. There's always, always, always hope. Don't
Yeah.
throw in the towel, or don't throw in the wrench either.
Right. Right. It's kind of funny. I was telling somebody else this. I can remember a time when I was in school studying to do what I'm doing. And I thought we'd talk about marriage stuff. And I think, well, if I counsel Christian couples, they really won't have very many problems. It'll be pretty easy doing that. Wow. It's about 2 weeks into practice that I realized, well, throw that one out, because the problems are the same. But like you said, we've got a source that is different than the world does to help us through things or see things different, or to bring healing and all the things that have to be in a healthy marriage.
Yeah, I agree. So you talk about information about your spouse is a killer wrench. You talk about unforgiveness, which leads to the third thing, which is someone. Another wrench is someone or something else. I remember 10 years into my marriage, my wife said, "You're cheating on me." I said, "That is not true. I am not. Never even come close to cheating on you." She goes, "You are. You are having an affair with the church. Your
Mm,
ministry is your
mm,
mistress." I went, "Oh man." She's right. I am. And so for me, it was a something else,
yeah,
but there are a lot of cases where it's a someone else. Can you talk about that wrench of adultery?
absolutely. I don't think anybody I've ever worked with, Jim, never walked out the door one day and said, "I think I'll go have an affair." It's the baby steps. It's seeing somebody at the coffee shop, and you just kind of begin to figure out what time they're there, and you happen to be there at the same time every day, and start conversations and just some things like that. One I heard an example one time that I thought was really good. It said, if two people are playing tennis and it's like the person you could have an affair with, well, if you hit the ball over, if that person doesn't hit it back, it's over. But if they hit it back and then you hit it back, then you started something going. And so I think as guys, we have to realize, one, I think that we're vulnerable. Anytime I see anybody, male or female, that says they are not vulnerable to sexual temptation, they're fooling themselves. I mean, we're just wired that way. And guys, we're visual. I mean, but Jesus was tempted and didn't sin. So temptation itself is not wrong. It's not a sin. It's what we do with that. And so it's learning to bounce our eyes when we see somebody that's dressed in a way that seems appealing to us. It's learning to walk away from situations. And I think the best way you do that is, I've prayed for years that my sexual desire would be only for Nancy. God has honored that prayer. That doesn't mean I've not had some temptations, just like everybody. I could never say that. But when I start thinking what I would give up with Nancy to do something like that, it changes the way I look at it completely. And so that's what we need to do. And I think we live in a culture that I think it's easier and easy for people to kind of turn their head at that. Well, not put it on the same scale that, maybe past generations did. People, divorce rate, one reason now divorce rate's going down now, but I think part of it is because fewer people are getting married. But my parents' generation, there were very few divorces. Now there were a lot of bad marriages, but but they didn't divorce. Or now and so I think that option, you've got to take that option that there's somebody else out there off the table too. That this is the person God gave you to do life with. This is what is the scripture that says, I can't remember the address on it, rejoice in the wife of your youth. Those are the things. I mean, yeah, marriage is a covenant for a lifetime. And I think when you see it that way, it's like, okay, this is an adventure. It's going to be better than anything out there. And so I'm going to stay on this track. I use the example of a highway a lot, that get an awesome marriages at the end, and you start on the highway when you get married, and there's going to be some bumps in the road. There's going to be some detours, but detours has got to bring you back on the road. It's when you take an exit, and adultery is an exit, that you may never get back on that road. And so you just got to say some of those things. You pass those exits, and you don't go off those exits. You see that the bigger picture. My pastor did a series, and he talked a lot about pre-deciding. I think for guys, pre-deciding that I'm not going to look at that. I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to spend time with that person. I'm not going to contact that girl that it just messaged me on social media that I knew or dated in the past. And so if you pre-decide, then you get in that situation and you've already made your decision. I think a lot of times if we leave that door open, and sometimes I think purposefully we do, then it's easy to walk through that door. Yeah. And you got to close that door.
I hear you saying, do not negotiate with yourself when it comes to your marriage.
No.
Do not
negotiate. It's a great way to put it.
Yeah. No, that's really powerful. Yeah. And I would say, not only as someone else, I want to add, guys, because our guys that are listening to this program work hard. So, guys, I'm saying it could be something else.
Absolutely.
You want to talk about that?
Be. Yeah, it could be. You mentioned ministry. And honestly, Jim, over the years I've worked with pastors and stuff, I think that's one of the biggest some things that there is. Because you can justify, well, I'm doing this for God. I'm doing God's work. I'm helping these people. But I had a youth pastor's wife tell me one time that she said he's always leaving to go meet with a group. And she said, what about our group? What about our family? Why are you leaving us and going to those groups? Your family has to come first. That's the way God designed it. And just have to realize that, and probably part of the problem is in ministry, if you're doing a pretty good job, you're getting a lot of affirmation. You're getting a lot of people telling you, man, you're doing a great job. Oh, I was so moved by what you did or said or how you led that, all these kind of things. Well, Tom, your wife's got 3 kids running around. Well, she may not be giving you all that affirmation right now. You're in a season of life that's hard. And so you need to be there with her. I think anytime we start getting needs met outside of marriage that God designed to be met in marriage, we're in trouble. And that's not just sexual. It is anything like that. The admiration, I've got to do things so that first admiration comes from my wife. That says, man, this has been a hard season, but we walked through it together. And I thank you for being home at night. And I thank you for helping with the kids. That's the affirmation we've got to go for. But the other seems pretty easy and pretty attractive. And we've just got to be able to say no to things like that.
Yeah, our ministry is an overflow of our marriage, not the other way around.
Yeah,
our ministry,
so good.
It flows through our marriage. So we need to realize how important that is, because here's the deal. If I am getting affirmation from my ministry or from my job or my career, and if I'm not taking care of what's at home, my marital intimacy starts to decline. The problem with
Yeah.
men, okay, here's the problem with men. You've heard the age-old saying, Dr. Kim, that guys will give love for sex and girls give sex for love. So there's this age-old argument between sex and intimacy, and you actually said in your book, when I'm talking with couples, I notice they use the words intimacy and sex interchangeably, but intimacy and sex are not the same thing. So
Yeah.
help us guys understand the difference so that we can better love our wives.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that intimacy can lead to sex, but there's so many kinds of intimacy that build and strengthen relationship. You've got like emotional intimacy, connecting with your spouse on an emotional way, and our wives want that so bad, and it's just, and sometimes I think we're scared. We think I can't do that, or do guys really have emotions? Which they do. They really do. And so it's I think that is something that I learned a lot from Nancy, about how to relate to her emotionally. And so it took me listening to her. And then probably the thing that helped me the most in doing that with her was empathy, was learning to be empathetic with her. Okay, what does this look like from her point of view? And then how can I come alongside her? And that helped us build that area of emotional intimacy. Intellectual, and this is another one that you could kind of look at it and think, what is that? But it's really knowing how your spouse works. It's spending time with them. It's understanding them. It's listening to them to know how their mind works. And so that way, when you do that, you can respond in a way that makes them feel cared for and accepted.
I appreciate your explanation in your book, because I always thought intellectual intimacy was we are on the same level intellectually, but you explained it really well. You
Yeah.
basically said become a student of your wife, get a PhD, and I call it
Yeah.
Shanaology. I really appreciate that
There you go.
you sifted that out. So thank you for that. That was good for me.
Well, it was good for me too, because I think, I just had to, there's so many things that we have to learn,
Yeah.
and I think that the problem is if we ever say, I don't want to learn anymore, I'm done learning. She can accept me like I am. No, you got to keep learning and growing. And then I think the other thing that I think sometimes for hard as guys is when we talk about physical intimacy, we certainly usually go to sex, but our wives, there's physical intimacy that does not include sex. It can lead to sex, but it's not sex. It's like holding her hand. It's putting your arm around her. When you're in a group, Nancy loves it when I put my arm around her waist. It's just like I'm claiming her in front of these people, and she likes that. And so those kind of physical things, non-sexual touch is probably a good way to put it. You know, and the sexual touch, there's plenty of time for that in the bedroom or
Yeah.
wherever.
Well, and
You know,
here's what's interesting. So we go to church on Sunday, and I've got a habit. We have pews, and I put my
yeah,
arm around my wife. I really am not really touching her very much, but we're touching side to side. But I just put my arm around her, and that's it. And that right there, that physical intimacy is a game changer.
absolutely. And I think as guys, we get so impatient and we get entitled. Well, we're married, so you should have sex with me whenever I want. And it just doesn't work. Our deal was when I don't know, we've probably been married 10 or 12 years. And I noticed she used to sleep right next to me. She was sleeping about as far away from me in the bed as she could. And I said, why are you over there? Finally, I asked her, and she said, because every time you cuddle me, it leads to sex. And sometimes I just want you to hold me. I just want you to cuddle me. And I go, I can do that. In fact, I said, okay, I promise I won't make a move until you do, if you'll come back and let me cuddle you. That was after I said that, I thought, well, that's the dumbest thing you ever said. I was meeting that intimate need, that the physical need she needed in the way that she needed it. And she was very open then to meet the sexual need in the way that I needed it. It
So
was a big turning point for us.
we had something similar happen to us as well. It was the year 20 though. I'm a real smart guy. It took me 20 years. Real smart guy. So hey, so you talk about emotional intimacy, connecting with her emotions, intellectual, knowing her mind, physical, touching her. You shared from earlier in the podcast in year 7, you almost lost your marriage because you lacked experiential. intimacy. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, I think that's the things that you do together, that you experience together, life situations, kids, those kind of things, and maybe trips or just that time. Nancy loves to drive from because we live in the city to drive out in the country, and and just experience the beauty or what we see, or maybe come across a ranch and cattle and horses, and that just that experience that we have together draws us closer together. So it's experiencing things together, and it's not always just the good things. I mean, I think when Nancy's mom was the first of our parents to pass away, and I went through that with her. I was the one who found what got it, broke the news to Nancy. I was the one who helped us get to Houston, and going through that with her and being there to just always being a fan. I didn't do anything magic. I didn't say anything magic, but she knew I was there the whole time. Going through that kind of experience together built our intimacy because then she knew after that, if something else happens, he's going to be there. I can trust him. I can count on him. He's going to show up. He's going to show up. And so I think it's being aware of those things that those are really times that we can come aside alongside our wives and really build that intimacy that really lays a great foundation of what they expect of us in the future and how they count on us.
Well, I'll tell you what, the experiential part of intimacy, when I decided to stop cheating on my wife with my ministry and
Yeah.
taking 2 days off and doing things, that was a game changer. And my wife and I, she's a flight attendant, so we can
Okay.
travel for free. So we do a lot of traveling, and people are
Nice.
like, we're jealous of that. I go, listen, hold on. We have to do it. If we
Yeah.
don't have experiential intimacy, our marriage is a train wreck. We are high maintenance marriage. We have to have this. But I had another couple in here with broken marriage, and he's saying, I'm just going to 10 more years of working, and then she can have all that she wants of me. And she looked at him and said, I won't be here in 10 years. So this is
Yeah.
important,
That's
guys.
so.
So guys, we need to listen up. So the last level, and so you talked about Christian couples and struggling, and you look at the divorce rates. They're very high in the church, very very high. But one of the things that I had Paul and Virginia Friesen on our podcast they're out of I think Virginia or Maryland, and they talked about couples that actually experience God together through prayer. Couples
Mhm.
that pray together, it makes their marriages virtually unbreakable. Can you talk
Yeah.
about this bond of spiritual intimacy? And really, that really is the overarching theme over the other four intimacies, right? I mean, talk to us
Exactly.
about spiritual intimacy, and how couples can practice this. Just give us your input here.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's probably the thing that does put everything together. And I told the story before, but Nancy was mentored before we got married by a lady told her that there's one thing you do, you pray together with your husband every night. So here we are on our wedding night, and I'm sitting on the bed, and she goes in to change into a nightgown, and she comes out in this nightgown, and she looks amazing, and she comes over and takes my hand and said, "We need to pray." And I think my head started spinning. I thought that's not really what I was planning on, but but then she told me the story, and so that first night we knelt by the bed and prayed the Lord's Prayer because we both do it. We didn't really, and we have prayed probably 99% of the nights of our marriage. It has made a difference in ways that I can't even imagine. I think it's just you go together before God, and God wants that. And when you're asking for things together with Him that are like for your marriage or kids, whatever it be praying on, when we go through hard times together. So that spiritual bond has been really good. We now we read through the Bible together. We don't read at the same time, but we use the same read through the Bible plan, and then we talk about things. I think that's been really good for us. I think worshiping together. We've been in a church our whole marriage, and there's something about, like you were saying, putting your arm around her in church, standing and worshiping. I put my arm around Nancy's waist, and then my arm around her while we're listening to the message. There was just something special about that. I can remember the first time Nancy and I went back in our church after being out for COVID, and our church opened fairly quickly compared to some of the others. In Oklahoma, we didn't have a lot of the restrictions that some other places had. And I can remember walking with her that first time, and the seats were scattered, and people had masks, and the worship music the band came on, and I thought, oh my gosh, it just felt that oneness with her and with God in that situation. And so I think you want to look for those things that connect you spiritually. I think prayer, one year, this was probably when our daughter Julie was probably 26. She wasn't married. She wanted to be married so bad. And so the first January, we prayed for three things. We prayed that Julie would be engaged that year. We prayed for the third one I know was her dad's salvation. Can't remember the third, Jim, but by August of that year, all three prayers had been answered. And it was like they were prayers that had to be a God deal. I couldn't control some guy falling in love with my daughter. I couldn't control her dad coming to the Lord, things like that. But so when you really pray for some of those things, and if you're praying for stuff like that and for your kids or wisdom as parents or help me to be a better dad and her to be a better mother and a better all those kind of things that you just see God show up. And so we learned to take everything to him. There are times we didn't. And every time I remember it was a couple of times with stuff with kids, and our kids were good, but there's things you got to make decisions on. And we had wrestled with this thing. And I think Nancy said, oh, we haven't prayed about that. And I go, oh yeah, we prayed about it. And literally within 10 minutes, we had the answer. It was just, and I think God smiles when we do that. I think he likes to show off. I think he likes to show us that I really do love you as much as I tell you I love you, and let me show you. And so the praying together has been huge for us. Worship together is huge. I think reading the Bible together. I love the Bible Project, the stuff that's coming out with those guys. I think it's a great way to read through the Bible. The videos they do are amazing. And so any of those things like that, use those tools that are there that you can get on your phone to grow. Use the YouVersion Bible app. There's all kinds of reading plans. Also marriage, we probably have 50 plans on there. And so with all kinds of different things with marriage. So there's so many tools that you've got right now to connect spiritually. Just use them.
Yeah, that's so good. It's really interesting. My wife and I, every time she leaves to fly, she left this morning at 5:07. And I'm in bed still, and I reached up and we pray together every time. She's not allowed to leave the house without prayer. We pray over every meal. We pray when we have meetings. We pray when we're driving miles, like all these M's. I mean, we have just woven it into the fabric of our marriage because we realize this, that 1 in 10,000 couples that pray together they divorce.
Yeah.
1 in 10,000. In other words, couples that pray together don't divorce. So if you want a fail-safe way to stay married, grow in your spiritual intimacy. I mean, this is I have guys tell me, I don't go to church. I don't need church. I go, really? Well, I'll tell you what, bro, your marriage needs church. With my wife and I touching hands when we're raising our hands in worship, there's nothing more intimate than raising my hands and feeling my bride next to me doing the same thing. There's nothing like it. So, hey, we got about 15 minutes left. And we've kind of transitioned. I want to. These guys are going, hey man, he wrote a book about sex. So
okay, let me add one thing to that.
Yeah, go for it.
With the prayer thing, you don't have to be a preacher.
No,
you can start out by saying, hey, you pick 2 or 3 things and you pray silently together about them. Don't feel like you've got to, because I think a lot of us feel inadequate about it, and it's going to feel awkward at first. Just persevere through it. Do whatever, stay at the comfort level before you're at that point, and let God, and just trust God with it. Okay, I just want guys to know, because I know it.
Well, yeah, what happens with guys is they go, oh, Jim is saying that, and I'm a paid Christian. I mean, I'm paid to be a Christian, all these things. So if I tell guys what I do, it's overwhelming. But just start with something really simple, man. Just pray for your meals.
Easy.
Really easy.
Absolutely.
And you can pray silently if you're not comfortable. Or perhaps, whatever. Anyway, so, hey, I want to talk about sex real quick. And I'm going to go, so I want to say this. I love the part on sex. I love how Nancy gives her input. And a couple times in the dialogue, you're like, really? I mean, it was just, you could just tell she was saying things and you're surprised. And I would love my wife to meet her. But it was really good. Great advice, great input. You talk about the frequency, what couples do and what, you answer that question in a very good and tactful way. But I'm going to ask a personal question.
Okay.
Not for you, for me. I've always wanted to know about sex going through life as we age.
Yeah.
And I always like to ask guys older. So now I'm 58. So if a guy asks me, "Hey, what do you expect in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s?" That's I can do that all day long, but I'm a little bit nervous about what's going on 60s, 70s. And for you, you're going, "Well, what about into the 80s?" So I'm
Yeah.
going to do something. I've never done this before.
Okay.
I'm going to throw you a little bit of a curve, and I'm going to ask you to go from, because our guys are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and then 60s, 70s, 80s not so much. But I want you to but they need to know what to expect. So give us a one word or one sentence description
Yeah.
of how you would describe sex in each decade from 30 to 80. Let's go 30 to 70 because you're not 80. So like when you think of your 30s, if you go back on your 30s, you think of sex in the 30s, like one sentence or a word, how would you describe it?
I would say challenging because we had kids.
Oh,
And I think you're looking at different seasons now. All our 30s, well, yeah, because our kids were kind of growing up in that time. So kids were little, and so I think as guys we got to realize that when the kids are in the house, our wife one ear is always listening for the kids at night. Especially if one of them is sick or something like that. So the challenge for us was to figure out what worked really for her in that. Okay, when is the best time? Okay, well, hey, the kids usually go to your parents on Sunday afternoon. What if we just Sunday afternoon, and then maybe we fit another time, or maybe we still had some times when it just spontaneous. But I think we learned in that we tried to do a little more planning and then be faithful to that to make sure we kept our sex life active in that. So I would say, because the 20s before we had kids, it was just like, wow, this is just like the movies. This is great. Uh,
I would agree with
40,
you. I looked forward to Sunday nap time, family nap time.
yep,
Finding those
absolutely.
ways for
Yep.
her to close all the boxes on her mental computer screen and just focus on me. And then there were other times she couldn't, and she would just yeah. So, but challenging. That's a great word. How
Yeah.
about your 40s? How about your 40s?
40s, I think it was, I would say, uh, I think excitement came because that was when we had taken trips together before the kids were born. We had probably 15 years that we did not raising kids. We didn't take a trip alone. And in that early part of our 40, let's say it would have been 44, we took a trip together. We went to Caribbean. We stayed in a beautiful place, the beach. It's like we got a jump start to our sex life again. So there was an excitement that came back. The kids were getting older. They were going to be leaving home in a few years. They were more independent. We didn't have, they were driving, stuff like that. And so I think it really gave us an opportunity to enjoy each other and also to look forward to what was coming. We would have more freedom in that, and to know that we're not going to let a year go by again that we don't go off somewhere. Because just like if I'm at home, maybe I take a day or a weekend off, but I need to get out of the city. I need to be somewhere else to really let go and be totally focused on her. So for us, it was some excitement came back into it.
Well, and in the
And
40s, but in the 40s, you start to realize that it's more than just about you. You really start to learn
yes,
her body. Like you learn her
and
body.
yeah, yes. And I think, yeah, absolutely. And I think too, I saw Nancy, there was freedom's not the right word, Jim, but she was more willing to initiate some fun. How to say it? Okay, so on this trip, she wore this really sexy deal one night, just where we were going to be together alone, and she started thinking more about the things that would puts a little excitement in our marriage in a different way. And so I felt like we were a real partnership in it then, that we were both doing things to really try to make this sex life be really special for us in that season.
Well, and then generally speaking, in your 40s, you're healthy still, you're young still,
Yeah.
you're strong. You're not having any kind of physical, like overt physical decay. Does that make sense? So, based on that, let's talk about our 50s.
Yes.
So, I've seen a physical decline in the 50s. So, I'm right there right now. So, talk to me about the 50s.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I had a guy who's 51 time tell me, I didn't know you could hurt yourself sleeping. And I thought, yeah, you're gonna wake up with aches and pains. You
Sleep
just you
injuries,
just
baby.
sleep. Yeah, I think 50s was more consistency. I think our sex life was consistent. We were in a pretty good rhythm. The kids were out of the home, um, and it was. I think the transition there was to when you're in your 20s, it's just a lot of just passion and everything. I think the passion, I'd say, was still there, but there was a closeness to it. There was um, a softness to it. And I think I think the Hebrew word dode, mingling of souls, I think in our 50s is when we experienced that. The distractions were away. We had gone through stuff together. We really cared for each other. We were doing good in our marriage at that time. Most of the time, we had some ups and downs, but I think that laid the groundwork for us just to really enjoy that time, and it became just um, I would say it was a deeper level of sexual relationship. Not that I loved all of it, but this was more of just connecting in a way, like the dough, just physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And I felt those many times those happened together. That was really cool
I would
because they're
say
just,
that, yeah. 100, I would say 100% for us. I would say for us it changed. I feel like the duration of sessions has really greatly increased. But as far as perform, she almost, I feel like the women, at least in my experience, there was a shift in who was initiating. Where in the first
yeah,
in the 50s it kind of shifted to her, and I think a lot of that related to just where I was at in my stage of life. So I saw that as well.
yeah,
Yeah, but the intimacy and the depth and the love, it's truly a rich time when you've been with one person for 30 years at this point, right? Because
yes.
if you're in your 50s, you're probably married 25 to 30 years.
Yeah, and I think and you have to you did got there, and I think we got there, and I think, oh, but you've got to lay the groundwork too. You've got to do the things that allow you to continue to have that closeness, intimacy, and then you see the fruit of it in a way that I didn't even imagine that it could be.
Well, the intimacy, if you don't build intimacy in your marriage, the things you're talking about, sex through the decades, is not going to happen.
It's not going
So
to
if
happen.
you don't have the
No,
intimacy, I mean, you're not, and I know guys that because of physical issues with a spouse or cancer or some kind of, they don't have sex, but they have the intimacy. So you can have a
sure,
wonderful marriage,
sure,
and it really can oftentimes be
absolutely,
disconnected from the sex. So, well,
absolutely,
how
yeah,
about your,
and be very, very close.
yeah, I do.
Six,
It's two guys talking about
six is
sex, man. It's funny.
and it's yeah, I think one thing Nancy said to me one time, I said, "I love that you're initiating more." In tongue in cheek, she said, "Well, you never gave me a chance before." And there's probably a lot of truth in
Yeah, there
that.
is, there is, there. So
Yeah,
what are you learning in your 60s? When you got
I
into your
think
decade of your 60s, what would you describe sex like then?
I think it was I think it was a continuation of what we'd learned in our 50s. I think it I think it the I think one thing that I learned that really had done more of in the 60s is that after sex, I loved just staying with her, holding her. And I think in the years that we didn't have time to do that, but just doing that and just talking and communicating, connecting in some other ways of intimacy. And so I think taking more time to really enjoy the experience. Um, I think that was really a part of what we learned in the 60s, for sure.
That is so good. Well, it's really funny. I'm in my 50s, and my wife, they're always training us, right? And my wife now is training me to linger. Stay here.
Yes,
Stay here.
exactly.
What are you doing? I'm like, okay, honey, I'm okay. And I'm learning that in my late 50s now, we're experiencing what you are talking about because
Yeah,
it's a deep
because
soul connection.
and I think and I love it because I think in the past, once that was over, there were years that I would just, okay, what's the next thing today? And so
Yeah.
I'd pop up and get on with the day. And I love taking that time just to be with her, and I know she loves
Yeah, that's so good. So now, did you see the frequency through the decades? Has the frequency changed? Or is that just based on the cyclical nature of the intimacy in your marriage?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I would say most of our marriage has probably been twice a week, just as an average. I think there's seasons that are harder. Nancy went through a couple of real bad health issues. She went through a 3 month period before she didn't sleep. I mean, sex kind of off the table with that. those kind of things. But we go through them together. So I think there's always the interruptions that can come.
Yeah,
But I think there's just you got to find with the rhythm that works for you. In the book, I talk about it's not as much the frequency; it's the quality of the
I
relationship.
agree 100%. Yeah, for sure.
You know,
For
and you've
sure.
got to be, and you've got to realize that if you're in a season, maybe you got three kids running around, maybe sex is once every 2 weeks or whatever it is right now. Remember, you're in a season,
Yes.
and if you're talking about it, and then you know that we'll be out of the season. Seasons don't last forever, and just being able to adjust each season and not be like guys can get pouty and all these kind of things that we can do. You know, I'm gonna die if you don't have sex with me. Well, you may think you're gonna die, but you're not
You'll
gonna
be all
die.
right.
I
You'll be all right.
promise.
You talk about in the book making sure that consistency based on each couple. So, how about your
Right.
70s? What are you learning in your 70s?
Oh, I think it's just kind of a culmination of all of it. I think there's more of a, I guess, gentleness. Maybe there's more of a gentleness in it than there was before. It's a more of being when we're intimate, looking each other's eyes more, and it's more about getting kind of lost in her eyes in the middle of having sex, and it's just there's just I don't know, it's just really special. It's just I just feel that such a oneness, you know, the Bible talks about two become one. I think we've experienced that more the last 5 years than we ever have. And you did talk about health and stuff. I know some people they say are very blessed to be as healthy as we are at this age. And we play pickleball, we work out, we do stuff, and so we're blessed in that way. And I know there's some constraints some people have, and I think, but I also know what you said is true that there's other forms of intimacy that are really wonderful to have in your marriage if the sexual part of it can't be for a season or a period of time.
Yeah, that is so good. This is well, you talk about 5 things women want from their husbands in sex, which I love. I might do an equipping on that. That was so good. I might give you full credit, of course, and talk about it. It was so good. You have a couple things that are so good. I just need to put them out there to the guys. We didn't have enough time
Okay.
today, but I will ask you this question. So the book is Love, Intimacy, and Sex in the second half. How can people connect with the book and connect with you?
Okay. Right now, the book is on Amazon, but it is only in the e-book. I think it'll be in paperback will be on there within the next 30 days. But you can get the paperback now. Go into awesomemarriage.com, which is our website. There you can find all the resources we have. We have courses. We have free resources. We've got everything grouped. You know, if you're having trouble with communication, we got a ton of stuff that you can go for nation. Some of it's videos, some of it's podcasts, different things. And so we have made that website, I think, is a really go-to place for everything. And there's a lot of great resources there. There's stuff for guys. Our YouVersion plans, there's so many on there. There's a bunch of them just for men. One that I did with my pastor, Craig Rochelle, that we did together on fighting for your marriage. So we've got just a lot of resources. And we talk about that all the time. How do we continue to help people know what all we've got? Because we've been putting resources on there and creating them for almost 15 years now. And so got a lot of stuff and we keep it updated. It's not like you're going to see a video of me that like, who is that guy? You know, we keep updating things. So, awesomemarriage.com. We're on all social media. I'm on social media. The other 2 books that were published are both on Amazon, 7 Secrets to an Awesome Marriage and 14 Keys to Lasting Love. This is probably my favorite of all of them, the Love, Intimacy, and Sex, just because it's just kind of it's our story. And if it's going to help people, and I think we've already seen that it does, and that my bride was nice enough to be so open and honest and transparent in it, it's made a huge difference because a lot of times we just don't talk about those things.
Yeah, she is a special lady. I want my wife to meet her. I think they
I'd
would.
love that.
I think them and us on a double date in Oklahoma. That would be a epic experience in OKC. Hey, so
Absolutely.
guys, I want to give you a boots on the ground today. Here's your assignment, guys. I want you to go to church, and if you are sitting in pews, I want you to put your arm around your wife the whole service. If you are not sitting in a pew, I want you to sit so close to her, you're either holding her hand, or touching her somehow. Do that. Build a form of physical intimacy in church that does not expect sex. And, hopefully, and just do that, guys. See what happens next. So, Dr. Kim, man, when I was on your show, I just really connected with you. You are a great heart, great heart for marriage. Thank you so much for coming on. It's really an honor to have you.
It's so much fun, Jim. Thank you for inviting me. Hopefully, connect again very soon.
Absolutely, great. Have a great day.
Thanks. You too.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you copy the link, send it on to a bro that this will help. Man, this is a real powerful topic. So thanks so much for listening. Guys, remember, until next time, feel the wet sand on the arena floor, hear the deafening roar of the crowd, taste the sweetness of victory, smell the stench of battle, get in the game, get dirty, grind it out, and be a man. You know, we often forget, guys, that God has called us to steward the bodies he gave us so that we'll be ready, healthy, and spiritually dangerous to fight the good fight. That's why we're so excited to partner with Mountain Tough Fitness Lab. Join me on my journey by going to mountaintough.com and getting your free 6-week trial when you type in the code ARENA30. You won't be disappointed. Stay dangerous.